you poor?
I am the owner of this lake, idiot.
What happens when a quiet morning ritual collides with someone else's sense of authority, and the lines between courtesy and entitlement blur beyond recognition? Early one Saturday morning, Henry Miller eased his vintage aluminium fishing boat into the crisp waters of Willow Lake. The sun hovered just above the horizon, casting a pale golden glow across the glassy surface. At 50, Henry cherished these solitary dawn outings more than anything, a chance to remember his late father guiding him through the same reeds and coves, teaching him patience, respect, and the art of listening to the wind. He had parked in the gravel lot just off County Road 47, a 10-minute drive from his modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of Springfield, Missouri. The lot was empty, save for his dark green pickup and boat trailer. After unlatching the hull and securing his thermos of coffee, he paused to savor the stillness. The lapping of water against the dock, the distant call of a loon. This was his sanctuary, unmarred by cell phone buzzing or the demands of his marketing job. Just as Henry began lowering the boat into the lake, he heard hurried footsteps crunching on gravel. He turned and saw a woman striding toward him, determined steps. She appeared to be in her mid-50s, shoulder-length black hair. Her forced smile failed to soften the stern tilt of her brow. "You can't park that here," she declared, her voice sharp and commanding. "This lot is for residents and their guests only." Henry straightened, setting his wrench aside. "Good morning, I'm Henry Miller," he replied evenly. "I fish here often. I didn't see any signs." She tapped the clipboard. "I'm Susan Parker on the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association board," she announced, as if it conferred some special power. "And you're not on the approved list. Only members of the Willow Lake Fishing Club may use this facility. You need to move that boat or I'll call it in." Henry gave a polite nod. "I must not have missed a sign. I've fished here for years without issue." "Sue, was it? Let me check." She squinted at him over the top of her sunglasses. "There's a notice posted by the pavilion. You probably didn't see it beneath the oak trees." "I'll take another look," Henry said, turning toward the path leading to the pavilion. He counted fewer than a dozen yards before the structure loomed, its wood weathered by sun and damp. There, half hidden behind a cluster of ferns, he spotted the small white sign, "Private Property, Willow Ridge HOA, Fishing Club Only." The paint was faded and the post wobbly. He retraced his steps. "That sign's here," he said quietly, "but it's not very visible." He weighed his next words. "Sue, I'm the trustee of this lake. The Maplewood Trust purchased Willow Lake 3 years ago. The public records at Greene County Recorder's Office show my name. I pay the taxes." For a heartbeat, Sue's composure slipped. Her clipboard wavered as she blinked rapidly. Then she straightened. "That's absurd." Her tone brimmed with disbelief. "You're bluffing." "I'm not," Henry answered calmly. "The paperwork is on file. I've got a copy in my rig, but you can look it up right now. The trust owns this entire lake, dock, and shoreline." Sue's lip curled. "Even if that were true, you can't just revoke long-time community access." She tapped the clipboard again. "We have agreements." "Agreements that were never renewed," Henry cut in. "The original license for the HOA to use the dock and permit fishing expired 10 months ago. No request for renewal was filed. It's a courtesy, not a right." She opened her mouth, closed it, and looked away. "Fine," she snapped. "Move your boat, or I'll call the sheriff." Henry exhaled. "Do as you must." He secured the boat, climbed into the helm, and guided it toward the reeds on the east end of the lake, the only spot where the water wasn't obscured by logs and lily pads. He cast his line and settled into the swivel chair, hoping for a quiet day. At 9:00 a.m., a white golf cart rolled to a stop beside the dock. Henry looked up, expecting a local retiree selling lemonade. Instead, Sue sat behind the wheel, her clipboard replaced by a two-way radio clipped to her belt. Beside her was a young man in a neon vest, one of the HOA's contract security officers. "Henry Miller," Sue called across the water. "This is your final warning. You're trespassing. Leave now." Despite his clear letter, the neighborhood's reaction was swift and polarized. Within days, Henry Miller noticed whispered conversations at the grocery store and cold shoulders at the hardware shop. The local community bulletin board, once a humble collection of yard sale flyers, now bore a typed notice titled "Lake Access Suspended," pinned beneath a hand-scrawled addendum. "Don't let one man take away our heritage." No signatures. No encouraging spirit of dialogue. Early Monday morning, Henry returned to Willow Lake, not with rod in hand, but with a toolbox full of supplies. The dock's rotted planks and rusted fasteners had been neglected far too long. He intended to spend the day repairing what the HOA had long ignored. As he unloaded lumber and nails, a familiar pickup rolled to a stop beside him. It was Frank Delgado, his friend and lawyer, wearing jeans and a plaid shirt, though his professional demeanor remained unshaken. "Henry," Frank said, stepping onto the dock. "How are you holding up?" Henry smiled, extending a hand. "Better now that I'm fixing this place up." He handed Frank a hammer. "Mind giving me a hand with that loose beam?" They worked side by side through the morning, replacing 2 damaged boards and securing the railings. Frank remarked on the tranquility, punctuated only by the hammer's rhythm and the gentle lap of water. For a moment, the lake felt like Henry remembered, untouched by bureaucracy and brimming with possibility. Around noon, a golf cart appeared, this time piloted by Andrea Preston, a newly elected HOA board member whom Henry had met briefly at the office. She wore work gloves and carried 2 cold waters. "Figured you might need these," Andrea said, handing Henry a bottle. "And to say thanks for giving me a call about the board meeting." She shot Frank a diplomatic wave. Henry took a grateful sip. "Glad you're here. The dock needed attention, and the HOA hasn't done a thing for maintenance. This was overdue." Andrea nodded, settling onto the repaired bench. "I agree. Many of us felt blindsided by Susan Parker's approach, and frankly embarrassed by her tactics. The board asked me to reach out if you were open to discussions." Henry set his water down. "I'm open to respect, Andrea, not negotiations just for the sake of appeasement. But yes, let's talk terms, maintenance schedules, orientation for new anglers, and clear renewal processes." She smiled. "That sounds fair. I'll bring those suggestions to the board at this week's meeting." She glanced at Frank. "Mr. Delgado?" Frank gave a courteous nod. "Everything in writing, Andrea. We'll draft a revised access agreement with a clear expiration clause and annual renewal requirements. It'll include maintenance responsibilities and a 3-strike policy for violations." Andrea's relief was evident. "Thank you. That will restore some trust if the entire board cooperates." After Andrea departed, Henry and Frank resumed work, replacing the final railing. By mid-afternoon, the dock looked sturdier than it had in years. Henry stood back, wiping sweat from his brow as he admired the clean wood and secure supports. "That old structure would have collapsed by next season," Frank said. "Good thing you stepped in." Henry laughed. "I didn't buy the lake to watch it fall apart." He paused, contemplative. "You know, Dad always said we have a duty to care for what we inherit. Land, family, even community. Maybe this is more than property. It's about stewardship." Frank clapped him on the shoulder. "Well said, and a perfect note for the meeting." That evening, Henry drafted an email to Andrea, outlining the key points for the proposed agreement. He emphasized a rotating maintenance committee, mandatory safety and property use orientation for all HOA members and guests, scheduled cleanup days, and explicit annual renewal deadlines. He attached a photo of the refurbished dock as evidence of his good faith. On Wednesday, the HOA's community room buzzed with anticipation. Rows of folding chairs filled quickly with residents, some curious, some skeptical. A projector displayed the words "Willow Lake Access Agreement Review" on a blank white wall. At the head of the room sat Susan Parker, her clipboard replaced by a stack of paperwork, and beside her, Andrea Preston, calm and poised. The meeting began with Ron Castile, the acting HOA president, thanking everyone for attending. "Our goal tonight is to address recent events and work toward a solution that honors both the HOA's traditions and Mr. Miller's rights as trustee." A murmur rippled through the audience. Henry sat near the side, dressed in a button-down shirt and jeans, hands folded. Ron continued, "Miss Parker, could you summarize the board's perspective?" Susan cleared her throat, glancing at her notes. The original agreement allowed community fishing under the presumption of goodwill. Unfortunately, the trust's ownership came as a surprise, and the board feels we've been good stewards ourselves. Andrea raised a hand. Excuse me, Susan, if I may. Stewardship includes upkeep, the dock's condition, endangered residents. If we wish to fish, we must maintain our own facilities, or work with Mr. Miller to share responsibilities. Susan bristled but nodded. I understand your concerns. Ron then looked to Henry. Mr. Miller, would you please present your proposal? Henry stood, voice steady. Thank you. My father and I fished these waters years before Willow Ridge existed. When Maplewood Trust purchased the lake, I kept access open without fees or restrictions, believing in community. He clicked a remote, and slides displayed photos of littered shorelines, broken benches, and rusted ladders. Maintenance fell entirely to the HOA, yet no action was taken. My proposal is simple. Annual access license, renewed every January 1st, with written request from the HOA, maintenance schedule. 4. Quarterly shoreline cleanups and dock inspections, coordinated with the trust. Orientation requirement. All HOA members and guests must complete a brief orientation covering rules, history, and respect for the property. 3. Strike violation policy. Failure to comply results in suspension of access privileges for 30 days. Rotating committee. A group of 3 HOA volunteers working directly with trust representatives to plan improvements. A hush fell. Even Susan looked thoughtful. Henry concluded, I'm willing to undertake major repairs, electrical lifts, dock resurfacing, but only if the HOA honors its commitments. This lake belongs to all of us, but it will survive only through mutual respect and shared responsibility. A resident in the back stood. That's fair, she said. I've seen the trash firsthand. We've neglected our end. Another voice piped up. This orientation is a good idea. My kids ruined my boots with broken glass last summer. I never knew to teach them better. Gradually, the tone shifted from adversarial to collaborative. Susan cleared her throat. On behalf of the board, I apologize for the confrontational approach. I underestimated Mr. Miller's commitment to the lake and overstepped my authority. Andrea motioned toward the sign-up sheet. If you support this proposal, please add your name. One by one, residents lined up. Neighbors old and new, teenagers curious and eager, families who remembered picnics and fishing derbies. Within 20 minutes, the sheet brimmed with signatures. Ron smiled broadly. It appears we have a consensus. We'll draft the revised agreement tonight and circulate it for review. Mr. Miller, thank you for your patience and for your dedication. Henry nodded, gratified. Thank you all. Outside the meeting, as residents mingled and exchanged relieved smiles, Henry felt a genuine warmth, not merely from victory, but from renewed community spirit. He shook hands, answered questions, and even exchanged programming tips with a local school teacher interested in lake ecology. By Friday morning, the final agreement lay on Henry's desk. The HOA board members signed one after another, Susan Parker last, her signature hesitant but genuine. Andrea handed Henry the bound document. We're officially partners, she said. Welcome aboard. Henry affixed his trustee signature and slid the agreement into a protective sleeve. He packed a small celebration picnic, sandwiches, lemonade, and cookies shaped like fish, and headed to Willow Lake. Under the early sun, he unpacked the feast on a freshly sanded bench and watched as Andrea, Ron, and a handful of volunteers met him at the dock, armed with nets and trash bags for the first official cleanup. Even Susan carried a broom and dustpan. Children ran along the shore, chasing minnows under the watchful eye of parents. Teenagers rigged fishing poles, eager after orientation lessons. A photographer snapped photos for the local newspaper, capturing the moment civic harmony triumphed over conflict. Henry looked over the scene, heart full. He realized that the lake's true legacy was not ownership or entitlement, but shared stewardship. People coming together to honor the past and protect the future. The wooden boards beneath his feet, the ripples at the water's edge, and the laughter carried on the breeze all bore witness to a renewed respect. As he raised a glass of lemonade in a silent toast, Andrea joined him. To Willow Lake, she said. To Willow Lake, Henry echoed, letting the words settle in the quiet dawn. And in that moment, he knew that sometimes the greatest victories lay not in asserting one's rights, but in inviting others to join in preserving something precious together.